folks, Griffin Lucia here with another Jund video in Modern. Kind of building off of the video that I made last time, taking a look at some Modern Horizons cards and adding them into an existing Jund deck, and kind of seeing what we need to attack the format. And yeah, the Modern Horizons format is kind of a crazy place. Pretty interesting stuff going on. As for this deck, the changes that we made from last time are I've bit the bullet and got my run in sixes, and they're great. Really good. Let's see, we've got Liliana the Last Hope, and we went up to 2 copies of Abrupt Decay. Pretty much it for the main deck. The sideboard, I got tipped off to trying some copies of Crime and Punishment, because Punishment is a good way to deal with the card Urza's Saga. But it also basically acts as another copy of Engineered Explosives. And we've got some Nature's Claims and Ancient Grudges. And outside of that, it's about the same. So not too much in the way of changes here. Just trying to tailor the, I guess, removal and answers suite to what the format has got going on. I think that like a lot of the deck is like working kind of as we hoped. Like the Ignoble Hierarchs are awesome. The Ragavans are awesome. I like the Doffy Voidwalkers. But beyond that, it's like, now that we've got a deck that functions, it's like, now you got to turn around and make it so that it's good against the format. And because this is inherently a reactive deck, where you have to try to anticipate what your opponents are going to be doing and counter it. And so the idea is to, now that we have this shell that kind of works, to tinker with it and get it set up for the metagame that we're expecting. So I ran this deck through a league, and we're gonna check out how it went. All right, so here's the first match that I recorded here. First match of our league. Hand looks pretty solid. Running into immediately the problem with Ren and 6 and Doffy Voidwalker being in the same deck. Right, this looks like pretty easy, like Thoughtseize on 1, and then maybe Voidwalker on 2 or whatever, but having both basic swamps in your hand is kind of awkward. So here we drew fetch land, so we can actually play like Thoughtseize on turn 1, and then have our choice of either Voidwalker or Ren and 6 next turn. So looks like Ren and 6 is going to be really good here against this Thalia and Flicker Wisp. All these 1 toughness creatures. Problem is that, because we're on the draw here, we can't actually play the Ren and 6. So now it's like, well, if that's what we're up to anyway, maybe the right thing to do is Thoughtseize away the Flicker Wisp. And because it's not like the Voidwalker can attack, or not like the Voidwalker can block. So now they got no spells. They're playing off the top of the library. If they whiff here, then we get to play Ren and 6, and we're kind of off to the races. But if they draw something good, then it's like we're kind of in trouble. So they're using Field of Ruin. This isn't actually that big of a deal for us. We are kind of getting close to the point where we're running out of basics. Just so happened that against the Ghost Quarter Field of Ruin deck, we drew 2 of our basics. So Giver of Runes, our last card here. Alright, so finally we have to pop off this Thalia here. They're down to Giver of Runes and a Vial on 3 with nothing really going on. Opponent goes face. With the Giver of Runes. Ghost Quarters us, fair enough. Ragavan looks pretty nice here. Getting wastelanded by the Ghost Quarter. Not a huge deal when we have Wrenn and 6 available to us. Go ahead and get that mountain back. Cast a Voidwalker, cast a Ragavan. Wrenn and 6 looking very good here. Took out that Thalia. Got us a bunch of land drops. The problem with Wrenn and 6 in this deck is that, like, I mean, we're going to win this game. It looks pretty good for us here. And these Dauthi Voidwalkers doing pretty much, like, doing a lot of work for us. But you can see that, like, if they had, you know, traded off against these Voidwalkers and had answers to our creatures or whatever, then we're kind of just sitting there with a bunch of lands in our hand. And, you know, the ultimate is a threat for sure, but, like, we don't have a ton in the way of ability to turn Wrenn and 6 into an engine. It's a powerful enough card, clearly, that you don't need it to be like good, to be a worthwhile inclusion. But if we had something like Nurturing Peatland or potentially like a copy of Barrenmore or something like that, we'd be able to utilize Wrenn and 6 a little bit better. Having said that, like in that game, it was great. It totally neutralized their like ability to try to mana screw us, and it picked off some of their creatures. One thing to note though is that like, and I think we'll see for the rest of this match is that the 1 toughness creatures they're just like aren't as many anymore. Taking a look at our sideboarding here, I'm bringing in Engineered Explosives and the Crime Punishments. Those are going to be good against, like, you know, on 1 or 2, whatever. Going to be really solid there. And the Hunt Masters are usually good in these creature matchups as well. Interesting hand. I might have kept this on the play. On the draw, I didn't think that was going to be good enough. This hand, it looks kind of bad as well, but we got 2 copies of Bloodchief's Thirst and Explosives if we need it. Liliana of the Veil when we find our 3rd land. So I think this is a pretty good 6-card hand. Turn 2 Thalia. We're kind of already to the test here. A couple of options. We could Bloodchief's Thirst this. We could also just play Engineered Explosives. Engineered Explosives is interesting because you can just pay when you play it against a Thalia, you just cast it and have X equal 1, and because its ability is doesn't really have anything to do with how much X was. It's just all about the Sunburst ability. You can just pay like 2 different colors of mana, 1 for its casting cost and 1 for the Thalia tax, and then you're doing fine. It'll come into play with two counters. So would have been a great time to draw a land and just like jam a Liliana. Opponent's already down to 3 cards. Looks like they must have mulligan as well. But I decided to play this Engineered Explosives on 2 just to like make some kind of use of our mana here. Kind of deter them from being able to play something and equip it. Flicker Wisp is a really good answer to this explosives. So and now the problem is we can't really play this Ignoble Hierarch because the opponent's just going to equip the Flicker Wisp and nuke us with it here. So still kind of nothing to do. Yep. That's probably just going to be about game. So, okay, whatever. 2-lander. Never got there. So going into game 3, I guess I should mention Tarmogoyf. I don't mind trimming a Tarmogoyf or 2 in a matchup like this. lots of times these like mono white decks or just there's a few different decks out there that are pretty likely to run Relic of Progenitus, and Relic of Progenitus like is just such a good answer against Tarmogoyf that like I don't mind. I don't really mind drawing one Tarmogoyf and having an opponent with Relic of Progenitus, but if you draw like multiple Tarmogoyfs and they have Relic, it's a real problem. So here's an interesting spot. If I remember right, these are all, of course, pre-recorded. I think my opponent plays a Solitude here. Yeah. Solitude. So it's funny because, I mean, getting a hit in with Ragavan is, of course, really good. But in reality, I think that, like, this might be, like, an even better outcome because we had this dead Ragavan in our hand anyway. And now there's, like, not... there are plenty of things that could be a pain in the butt here. But, like, we're pretty protected because of the Wrenn and 6 in our hand. We're pretty protected against Thalia. Drannith Magistrate is an interesting one, though. But Liliana the Last Hope. It looks pretty nice here. I have to imagine, though, and I want to keep track of stuff like this. I have to imagine that just like having Liliana the Veil would have been better here. So we'll see. I mean, what happens the rest of this. The rest of this game, but if we could have just played Liliana of the Veil and minus on the Magistrate and gotten in with the Ragavan, maybe we'd have been better off. I don't know. The Magistrate shuts down Ragavan pretty nicely, though, both the triggered ability and just happens to be like the perfect stats. Yeah, and so say, for instance, if we did have Liliana the Veil here instead of Liliana Last Hope, we would +1, discard this Overgrown Tomb, get it back with Wrenn and 6, Kolaghan's Command the Stoneforge Mystic, get in with Ragavan. It is nice having two different Planeswalkers in play that can hit our opposing creatures, ping them. Makes these like 2 toughness creatures that seem to be popping up a lot more palatable. Trying to decide there if we wanted to play the Overgrown Tomb or what. So another hand is Cauldron Complete and Sword of Fire and Ice. So clearly we don't want them to untap. That would be bad. With the Stoneforge Mystic. Alright, here we go. Crime and Punishment. A couple of options. So first of all, I want to make clear that I don't know if I made the wrong play here. But one thing I didn't consider, and after having played this league, Punishment does not hit Planeswalkers. And so this ends up being like, I think probably still like the right, I think I still made like the best play available to me here with this copy of Crime Punishment. But if I had made a different play, I might have won, or I'd have been better off. But what I did was use my treasure token to get white mana so I could cast the Crime half and get back Solitude, which is going to exile the Drannith Magistrate. And so this is a pretty awesome play here, right? Like you get to, you just get to cast Solitude and Flametongue Kavu your opponent's creature, and got 2 Planeswalkers ticking up. This looks really, really awesome for us. We're running into the problem I was talking about, though, with the Wrenn and 6. Like, the Liliana ticking up is great. But, like, man, if we had a Baron Moore or something here, then I think this would be lights out. Here is a pretty nice draw for our opponent, and it's not, it's just something that I didn't really play around at all. So my opponent's kind of in the tank. We've got this Liliana about to ultimate, which looks really good. The opponent drew Flicker Wisp, and so they're going to Flicker Wisp the Solitude away. And when it comes back, it's going to hit our Ragavan. So all of a sudden, our opponent gets 2 creatures and kills 2 of ours. It's pretty incredible. And if they ever get to untap with either of them, they have Sword and Fire and Ice ready to go. So, I guess that means it's ultimate time. Still looking totally fine here. We know that our opponent's last card is pretty much a blank. And so the opponent's going to attack here. Could definitely see this kind of going either way. Whether I want to double block or just block with a single zombie. You know, if we block with a single zombie here, then that means next turn we get to make 3. But the opponent's gaining life. You know, if our opponent drew a copy of Giver of Runes this turn, then we'd be in really rough shape. So I'm not sure what the right block was there. But what's nice about the Liliana emblems is that we're getting them back next turn, so we're not getting as many as we would have if we had just chump blocked. Running 6 on 4. I think I'm supposed to not play that copy of Blindstained Mire, but I'm not 100% sure about that. I also think it might have been correct to attack there with one zombie, threatening the ability to ping away the germ token. So here's a really good one from our opponent. Lots of zombies. They're just gonna equip the Batterskull to the Archon. Yeah, looking back, I think it would have been right to make that attack that I was talking about maybe a 16. Right now, they're going to 28. And they have a land and a 1-drop, which is critical, absolutely critical here. That they have that. So I wish I was like kind of better at the math here and maybe didn't need to tank as long right now. Because my opponent kind of figures out the play here, which is to attack with everything except the Ignoble Hierarch. And now they're thinking about, oh, do I want to just chump block with this Giver of Runes? I mean, you know, I know my life total is going way up because of the life link. They do chump block with the Giver of Runes, which is really important because we had the win if they hadn't done that. Because let's see, we've got 16 damage, 18, 20, 22, 24 damage coming through right now. We're going to bolt our own zombie and negate the lifelink. And opponent goes to 3 right now. And then one damage. If they had not blocked, they would be at 1, and the 1 damage from the Ren and 6 would finish the game. So a pretty crazy match there. Pretty wild comeback from our opponent. You know, we had 2 planeswalkers and a bunch of creatures, and just like had a lot of things go right for him there. I got to imagine that, like, you know, our losses there were pretty between the 2-lander that never got off the ground and the and that crazy game 3. It's like, you know, whatever, things happen. I feel pretty good about, like, I guess the Ether Vial decks in general feel pretty good against them. And also, like, the Mana Denial plan did not work against us with with Ren and 6 in the deck. So that is one thing that's really good about having Ren and 6 around, is that you just, like, get to basically negate the whole like Mana Denial package. And it's really good against, you know, some of the small creatures. However, it is important to note that dealing 1 damage, like, these white creature decks are not all 1 toughness creatures anymore. It's not all, like, I don't know, like humans back in the day used to have, like, Champion of the Parish and Noble Hierarch and Thalia and, like, Phantasmal Image. So Ren and 6 was just, like, lights out against them. But now that people play, like, Giver of Runes and some other stuff that's 2 to 3 toughness, the Ren and 6 damage isn't quite as big of a deal. But having said that, I gotta think that that's kind of a good matchup, and maybe, you know, maybe not that list specifically. Having played against other, you know, white weenie decks, you know, white black, Thalia, humans, even stuff like Merfolk, like, I do like the position of the Jund deck right now, because the Ragavans and Noble Hierarchs make the, like, your ability to lose because you just kind of got outpaced by them, like, that doesn't happen as often anymore. And so when they have to try to beat you in a like a straight up value game, that's a lot harder for them. So I like where we're at against, like, this style of deck. So let's check out the rest of the rounds and see how we do against the rest of the field. All right, so here we are for the second round. Lost that first one. Definitely want to, you know, be keeping track of stuff like how Liliana the Last Hope wasn't as great as we had hoped, and Liliana of the Veil probably would have been a little bit better. In addition, like, the mana was a little bit awkward with the Ren and 6 and the swamps and stuff like that. So going in round 2, playing against a new opponent here. This looks like the red-black kind of mid-rangey aggro deck. There are 2 pretty popular Dragon's Rage Channeler and Ragavan decks right now. One of them is red and black that has discard spells and black removal and Cropsa. The other one is blue and red, and that has Murktide Regen and counterspells with Thought Scours. They both play Mishra's Bauble. The black one gets to play Lurrus because it doesn't have Murktide Regen. Opponent took Kolaghan's Command, which is pretty good for them. This hand definitely illustrates like a problem with playing Ignoble Hierarch, is that like you're, as I adjust my screen size here, you're not, it just kind of makes you more threat light, and so you're keeping hands that are like, if you don't have a threat to like kind of accelerate into, then the Hierarch isn't actually doing that much. You still are like, you know, it's Jon. You want to have answers. You want to have like removal spells and discard spells, and you need all that stuff to be, you know, doing your thing. But like, can you? It's a tough line to try to walk here. Opponent is very quickly accelerating into this Kroxa. Not a lot we can really do about it at the moment. I discarded this Bloodstained Mire, which in hindsight was pretty wrong, but probably not going to matter. I guess the thing is, if they kill the Hierarch here, if I were to draw Scavenging Ooze right now, then it'd feel pretty silly. Opponent using that treasure token that they got off of Ragavan to good use. I'm going to play Kroxa. What's different about Kroxa compared to Uro, and I spoke about this before in Historic, back, you know, when that was legal. You used to be able to play Uro in Historic as well as in Modern. The difference is that like the decks that run Kroxa are like usually set up to try to get, like, an Uro deck doesn't need to like use any kind of like velocity to try to get cards into its graveyard in order to enable the Uro. But the Kroxa decks need that. So they go hog wild and have like lots and lots of graveyard shenanigans going on. Like these baubles, these cheap thought seizes and stuff like that. You know, fetch lands, the whole 9 yards. Like, it does not take a lot for these Kroxa decks to just keep repeating the Kroxas. And so we're going to double bolt this Kroxa here, and it's like, you know, to what end? They're just going to keep recycling it. Whereas I know that I remember in Historic, like once you get killed in Uro, I mean, you were down a lot of cards or whatever, but you had some time before they were likely to get it back, because it's not like an Uro deck was like a graveyard deck. The opponent goes and gets Luris, casts Ragavan. It was a 5/6. That's not bad. But yeah, as you can see, our opponent was lining up to attack with Kroxa last turn, and just like any fetch land or whatever, and they're already ready to recast the Kroxa. Bobble. Sure. I'm sorry, the bobble was off of the Luris, yeah, so this is definitely important to note. One is that Graveyard Hate, sure, would have been really good here. You know, Scavenging Ooze looks like it would have been great here. Maybe a Voidwalker. We don't know for certain that like would have survived. We know that they drew a Lightning Bolt and hit our Hierarch with it earlier. So more copies of Voidwalker Scavenging Ooze would definitely be like a welcome addition here. That said, the fact that our opponent has Luris in their deck is just like a big deal, and so I guess that's something to think about just going forward as well. Is like, should we just be playing a version of this deck that instead of having Planeswalkers has Luris? I don't know. It's a whole different thing to be playing a Luris deck than this one. We don't have these Planeswalkers to ramp into. We don't have Huntmasters to ramp into. Having said that, Turok Dreadcantor does work with a Luris restriction. So basically, it's just the Lilianas, right? In the list that we've got here in front of us, it's just the Lilianas and the sideboard Huntmasters that are keeping us from having Luris. So is that worth it or not? I'm not really sure. But if you're going to be doing the Ignoble Hierarch thing, then, like I've been mentioning before, you do want some like expensive cards to ramp into some powerful threats. Alright, so here we are for game 2. This hand, I mean, it's kind of got everything we want. I guess I was on the fence about this for a little while, but I'm not sure 100% what the right play here is. But I cracked the fetch land so that I can have a swamp so that turns on these castle locked lands. If I go for Stomping Ground, I have all my colors, but everything comes into play tapped. So that looks pretty bad. So the thing is that if we want the lock coins to enter untapped, and we also want to have Huntmaster mana, you basically just have to guess. When we draw our 4th land, you have to try to guess if it's going to be a red or a green. So, if we draw a fetch land, then we're fine. But I think that's the right play. It is like a little bit more of a gamble, but it's also a gamble to like not play anything at all for a bunch of turns. It's like take a turn off on turn 1, play a second Castle Locked Lane on turn 2. Just kind of doesn't bode well. Opponent took Liliana of the Veil. We drew Blooming Marsh. So, of course, our plan with the fetch land there did not pay off so far. We're going to play a Ragavan and then play a Dragon's Rage Channeler. Fair enough. Someday I'll figure out how to use Nile Spellbomb correctly on Magic Online, but you know, today is not that day, I guess. Another Huntmaster, so that's going to be great if we do get a red source, but until then, you gotta wait until they attack to hit the Ragavan because they could just dash in another copy. Also, don't want to give them tons of free, you know, access to get Delirium. So there's our red source. So here we are on turn 4, and we have our red and our green, and so we're good to go. So this is looking pretty good. Opponent's got 4 cards in hand, but if they try to do anything like, you know, 2 over the top here with like Kroxa or whatever, we just go blank their hand away. They might have to try to use 2 removal spells on our creatures. Kolaghan's Command looks really, really good. Gonna cast Unholy Heat on the other one. Ignoble Hierarch joining the wrong team. That sucks. So we get to drop our other Huntmaster here. I did not play the land because I was worried about Kroxa. Or another Kolaghan's Command or something like that. And I wanted to be able to cast Go Blank on their hand and graveyard here. So there is the Kroxa. Here's another Kolaghan's Command. So now we're in a lot of trouble, and depending on what they're hit with their Surveil, they might have Dragon's Rage Channeler turn into a 3/3. They don't, so we get to play Lily here. And I guess the question is, what are we doing with it? I guess we just nab that Ragavan. Still kind of okay shape. I mean, they can go get their Lurrus. Thoughtseize is actually really good for them because it turns their Dragon's Rage Channeler into 4/4. Okay, I guess I gave up. But what was going to happen there was they are going to attack Liliana, down to 0 because of the Exalted. This is the sorcery, so it turns their DRC into a 3/3, gains flying, turns into a 4/4, kills Liliana. They go get their Luris. We're pretty dead. I don't know. Maybe a little frustrated. So anyway, this match, I would say that their deck is definitely a lot better tuned than ours. Also, Dragon Rage Channeler, even though it is a 1-mana creature, super threatening. Really got to be able to answer it. And also, I mean, the same thing goes for Ragavan. Having the ability to get rid of 1-mana creatures is going to be really important in this format. And I would also say that, I guess as we'll find out, I spoiler alert, I did play against the blue-red Murktide Regent deck and later in this league. And you need not only to have answers to their threats, but they have a lot of ability to find these creatures and cast them. Be it Mishra's Bauble, Luris to rebuy them, and then in the blue deck they've got Serum Visions and Thought Scours. Dragon's Rage Channeler by itself sets them up for better draws throughout the game. And then, Kroxa is just a recursive threat, so they're always going to have threats. You need to have good answers to these things and lots of them, because it's not like I killed your. I remember in formats, in the other formats, sometimes I cast a Fatal Push on your Delver. Man, that's going to set you back 5 turns before you can find another Delver and whatever. That's not the case anymore with these aggressive decks here, with the Ragavan and Dragon's Rage Channeler and just how kind of redundant they are, these cheap, super good threats. So, a lot to learn here. Would love Graveyard Hate and would love more cheap creature removal. And I think between this and the first match that we played, I can both of those matchups would have been really great to have more cheap creature removal. So we'll think about that moving forward. We're going to round 3. All right, so here we are for round 3. Kind of going to skip around a lot. This I think this player might have been double queuing or something like that. I remember this match taking a long time. Hand looks good. It's tough though, right? Because you really want 1-mana spells in this format. I mean, that you could say that for any part of Modern's history in the 10 or 11 years or whatever it's been since they came out with Modern. But this right now specifically is you really need to be doing something on turn 1. But having said that, we have our colors, we have tons of ability to catch up. I don't think this is a hand that you can really reasonably ship. Going with Blood Crypt on 1. Why did I do that? I don't know. Over the Overgrown Tomb? Maybe I had a reason in my head. Guess in case I draw a Lightning Bolt or something. 2 mana, Daughty Voidwalker. Sure. So, pretty good Abrupt Decay target. Would rather play Kolaghan's Command on it, but I don't think we're going to mess around here. I think the thing to do is just go get our Forest and cast Decay. Second main phase, Vindicate on the Blood Crypt. Well then. But we got there. So, again, like, Renin 6 ability to just totally counter these attempts at hitting our mana base. It's been very nice. Of course, our Wooded Foothills is gone because of Dothy Voidwalker, but that's okay. Seems like a good enough time to get rid of this Sorin. Sorin's Solemn Visitor is a pretty interesting one. Basically, the thing about like when you play against a black-white deck, like a black-white mid-range deck, you just have to kind of cross your fingers and hope they don't have Lingering Souls. Granted, Lingering Souls wouldn't even be that good against the Renin 6, but still, it's just like, if they have Lingering Souls, we're in a lot of trouble, you know, so. Still nothing good to do with the Renin 6. Looking back, I'm not sure what the best play here is. I think I played Liliana of the Veil and minused. If I was gonna plus, the trick, of course, here is you Liliana, you plus, you discard a land, and then you get your land back with Renin 6. And instead of doing that, I wanted to use the Liliana to get rid of the vampire token. Not 100% sure that's like the right play or whatever, but it's what we did here. Opponent doing the double Q thing. Skip ahead. Power of editing. Okay. So we plus our Renin 6. We minus on the vampire. Let's see. During our end step, we've got a copy of Solitude. Opponent has given up. Really kind of an amazing card, Solitude, but not a ton they could do there. We just wanted, let's see, what did I do here? I brought in Huntmaster. Did I cut Scavengers? Man, is that right? I don't know. I didn't see Lingering Souls in game 1, but I don't really think that's a good play. I guess I ended up taking out an Ignoble Hierarch for a copy of the Go Blank. I don't mind taking out an Ignoble Hierarch or two in a matchup where, like, you know, in some kind of like a mid-range mirror type thing. But it looked like this is... Conventional wisdom is you take out your point discard spells, your Thoughtseizes and Inquisitions, right? In a mid-range mirror. But this doesn't seem like it's a really, like, a typical mid-range deck. It's got two things going for it. One is that it's got, like, Sorin and Solitude, these cards that are, like, really, like, expensive, big effects. So, those are pretty troubling, and definitely things that you want to, like, when they're a mid-range deck, but they're also just, like higher up on the curve than you, then your discard spells seem to tend to look a little bit better. You get to exploit the fact that they usually need some kind of like mana setup in order to make them happen, or you can, you know, just take out their powerful thing and then their less powerful stuff. Right? You take out their 4-drop, and then all of a sudden their 3-drops are playing against your 3-drops, right? So there's that. The other thing is that Solitude in the deck makes it look like it's probably some kind of like grief, solitude, like ephemerate. What's the card called? Malakir Rebirth, I think. Kind of like almost a combo deck. And so if that's the case, cards like Ephemerate and Grief, they get a lot worse when you take the other part of the combo out of their hand. Opponent had just a tapped double-faced land card there. That's the Malakir Rebirth. It's a combo with Grief or with Solitude, where you get to evoke the card and then use the Malakir Rebirth, and then when it dies, it comes back and gets its ability again, comes back and isn't evoked the second time. So if the opponent had that right now, it'd be really good. They didn't have it on turn 1 though, so I'm not going to play around it. I think the trick is when I get a hand with Ragavan and Ignoble Hierarch in it, if it looks like a pretty clear path for the Ragavan to get through, then I just usually just let it try to go with Ragavan, especially because like you get to utilize the Exalted trigger. You get to get some damage in. So now all of a sudden you have a mana advantage with the Ragavan's treasure tokens, and you're clocking them. If I was to play Hierarch first, then I would have 3 mana on turn 2, but wouldn't have dealt 3 damage. So anyway, my decision here was to Thoughtseize and then play a Wrenn and 6. Decided to do that anyways. So we've got our mana on lock here. But the opponent's on a 1-lander, and I think they just kind of throw in the towel here. Yeah, fair enough. So, didn't learn very much from this match. But, I gotta say, there are a lot of times when, you know, in the past, your opponent could be on a 1-lander or something, and you just don't have enough to punish them for that. And there's one thing that, like, this mana acceleration kind of mana acceleration into Planeswalker version of this deck does that's nice, is that you just get to put pressure on people really fast, and that's something that's been missing. I would think from, or I do think from past versions of this deck, where, like, you know, I got a Tarmogoyf into play, and it was like a 2-3 or a 3-4 or whatever, and I started attacking, and then I, you know, made them Thoughtseize away some cards or whatever. But then my, you know, control or mid-range opponent found their lands, had a bunch of powerful stuff in hand, got rid of my threats, turned the corner. Like, that can happen to you. And so having the ability to really, like, put a serious clock on your opponent and take like a small mana advantage and turn it into a big mana advantage, makes it so, like, you know, a game like this where your opponent's on a 1-lander is just like a lot easier to make sure that you put away. So this like looks like just like you know, why are we talking about this? They only had 1 land, whatever. This is just a non-game, right? But in years past, like, an opponent with a hand that's this powerful, that's something you could lose. You know, you could definitely lose this game. Having said all that, it's nice to just be able to close a game like that when the opponent stumbles. So outside of that, didn't learn a ton from this game, from this match. Other than that, yeah, having these cheap creatures is good. And Wrenn and 6 is good against mana denial. And let's go to round 4. All right, so here we are for round 4. Again, another look at, like, Ignoble Hierarch being just the drawback of having Ignoble Hierarch in your deck. Something you definitely just got to kind of handle. If that was like a Tarmogoyf, if that was some other creature, maybe even like a Dark Confidant, then that is definitely a more keepable hand. I don't know if I would keep it. Depends, I guess, what the lands are exactly. Astral Cornucopia into Urza's Power Plant. Looking at this, I have no idea what's going on. So, you know. I do think that at this point we can pretty much go ahead and just forget about our life total against Astral Cornucopia for 0 Urza's Power Plant. I don't think that our life total is in danger, so we're gonna shock a bunch. Another Urza's land, so nothing going on. Let's just get in some damage. Bolting before damage to grow the Goyf. Oh look, there's 7 mana. Neat. So this is a Mystic Forge Tron deck. And they use Core Tapper to add counters to their copies of Everflowing Chalice and Astral Cornucopia. But Core Tapper grows the Grave, so sure, let's get in for a whole bunch of damage. Tormod's Crypt. Just a card that you're going to have in your deck, I guess. The opponent goes down to 8 because of Mystic Forge here. So, as bad as our draw is here, and as good as our opponent's is, I think they're actually dead to a land if they don't have any way to block this turn. Ensnaring Bridge, but they have 5 cards in their hand, so that's fine. Kind of hilarious. If they hadn't used Tormod's Crypt and had just left the Goyf as a 5/6, they'd be fine here. I guess that's not true. We had the answer to the bridge here, but. So, sometimes you just land a big Goyf, fire off some bolts. Rug Delver style. Canadian Threshold. Alright. Lots of stuff we can have here. Crime and Punishment going to be good against anything with Urza's Saga. That's why we've got it. Cleansing Wildfire good against Urza's Saga as well, and good against the Tron lands. No idea really what our opponent's doing, other than that they have a bunch of artifacts. So just bringing the anti-artifact cards. Again, you see me taking out Tarmogoyf when I suspect my opponent might have Relic of Progenitus. Looks like they already had Tormod's Crypt, of all things, so pretty fair assessment. This hand is another one of the ones I was talking about before. Like, one of these Ignoble Hierarchs being a different creature would be much better. I wonder, you know, if this was Ignoble Hierarch and Ragavan, we'd be looking really good. But instead it's 2 copies of Hierarch, so. However, great draw. Opponent's going to play Core Tapper. So what they can do is use the Core Tapper to put counters on the Chalice, use the Chalice to map on end step, go find their third power or Tron piece, and have Tron next turn. So that's really good. I've never seen a deck like what my opponent's got going on before, but after having played this match, I know a lot about it now. Pretty nice one. Pretty nice one here. I think, in retrospect, I'm supposed to hit the plant. I hit the tower because that's what they tutored up, which is like kind of conventional wisdom. But we already know that there's a plant in their graveyard, so there are only 2 plants left in the deck. So, should have hit the power plant. Surprised by the island. I don't really know what that means, but okay. Didn't see any. Didn't see any blue cards. Surge Node. So that's kind of a combo with Everflowing Chalice and Astral Cornucopia. So we're up to 6 counters on the Liliana. What's nice about Liliana, just like kind of in general, and I guess Liliana, the Last Hope, has this ability too, but Liliana the Veil is a little bit more disruptive along the way, is that like against decks where it's like, I don't really know what my plan is supposed to be, like just kind of stuff you've never seen before, stuff you're not planning on, right? It's modern, anything can happen. That like you just have this plan against like Ensnaring Bridge and against just all kinds of things where it's just like, I'm just going to tick up to 6, make them sacrifice half their things, just kind of see what happens. So Liliana the Veil looking really good in this game. Opponent had a real nice one on top with the Mystic Forge. So they're going to go get Pithing Needle and name Liliana. Now they've got 2 copies of Welding Jar in play. So nothing we can really do there for now. Checking to see if Surge Node can hit anything, and it can't. It can only target artifacts, so I'm not in danger of having my opponent put an extra loyalty counter on card. A neat trick you might remember from back when Lantern was a really popular deck, and Lantern versus Humans was a thing that came up a lot, is that you can attack with an Ignoble Hierarch against an opponent with no cards in hand and an Ensnaring Bridge and deal them a damage, and that's going to be coming up pretty often here. Opponent is super going off with their Mystic Forge. There's another Karn. I don't even know what you go get at this point. Maybe you just go get Blocking Ballista? Or, Worm Coil. So with the Liliana locked out, and 2 welding jars protecting the needle, nothing we can really do there. I don't know how they win, but I'm sure they do at some point. Thinking about bringing the Bloodchief's Thirst to fight the Karns. I don't know. A no-lander into a 6-lander. I think we got to ship this one back. This hand looks good, though. Trying to decide what to hold on to is tough here. Looking back, it might have been right to pitch the Hierarch. But it's like, I don't know. You're on 5 cards. It's tough. Seems like a really good way to win the game is to just like have turn 1 Hierarch, turn 2 Voidwalker, get in for 4 damage a turn, 2 for 1 some artifacts, and then hope to draw some shatters off the top or something like that. Urza Saga Surge Node. Another option would have been keeping just 1 land and running the same thing. So I would have the Thoughtseize here. I don't know. It's tough when you have the Hierarch and you're like, I want to get out of the gates fast, but then like, yeah, a mulligan to 5 is just like, the problem with the mulligan to 5 and the London mulligan is that you usually have like an option. You have like, am I going to bank on drawing lands or am I going to bank on drawing spells? And you have to basically decide like which one of those you're going to draw to make your 5-carder functioning. And so I kind of gambled and lost here. Like if I had put back one of my lands, then I'd been way better off. We could have Thoughtseize last turn. Not that my opponent is really coming out of the gates that fast here, but still would have been nice. So now they get to use the Urza's Saga. The thing about the turn 1 Urza Saga is that it just... You don't get any of the tokens with it. So... It really doesn't ever work that well. If my opponent had played turn 2 Urza Saga, I would have been in a lot of trouble. Because they would have just made 2 constructs and gotten, you know, this Everflowing Chalice or whatever it was they wanted to get. This would have been really good. This is kind of nice. We get to get rid of this Core Tapper and the Everflowing Chalice. So we're in an okay spot. Opponent's only got 2 mana. We got a Surge Node, but nothing to go with it. We've got a Dathi Voidwalker that's attacking for 4 a turn. We've got a copy of Crime Punishment. So that's pretty cool. Don't know what we're doing with it yet. I'm going to play Karn. They have Tron now. So they go get a bridge. So I feel like in my head right now, like I recorded these matches the other day. Yesterday, and I feel like in my head I was trying to decide. So I draw the land here. I'm like, should I hit the Karn or the Ensnaring Bridge with the Crime Punishment? But don't do that. Punishment does not hit Planeswalkers. So that's not a thing you can do. Also, the Ensnaring Bridge doesn't actually shut off the Dathi Voidwalker because the opponent's got 3 cards in here. So whatever. There you go. So here's a Blast Zone. And there's a Mystic Forge. Alright. So now opponent has no cards in hand. He's got 10 life. What to do here? Crime Punishment for 0 looks pretty good. It's a good way to like shut off a lot of their mana. That said, Crime Punishment for 4 looks pretty good because it hits the Mystic Forge. Crime Punishment for 3 lets us attack. But our other trick here is that the Dathi Voidwalker, we can hit the Karn, cast it. And my plan here is to cast Karn, go get the Damping Sphere that is in my sideboard right now, and use that. And yeah, we go for this crime punishment for 0, so it hits the Tormod's Crypt and their 2 cornucopias. I don't know. In hindsight, I kind of hate this play. I think I should have done crime punishment for 4, gotten rid of the Mystic Forge, and then cast the Karn, and just had the static ability going. And our opponent would be empty-handed, they'd have the Ensnaring Bridge or whatever, but like, the Ensnaring Bridge doesn't actually stop the Ignoble Hierarch, so they'd be kind of out of gas. They'd have a lot of lands or whatever, but they'd have to they would have to draw something instead of being able to like rip through their deck with the Forge. This play though does get around a lot of things, including like our opponent just being able to draw a lot of stuff off of that Mystic Forge. You know, the Damping Sphere cuts out the ability for them to play the Mystic Forge thing. Cleansing Wildfire is pretty sweet here. And so now the question is, what do we hit with this? Do we go after this Urza Saga before it can start, you know, tutoring up stuff and making tokens? Or do we hit one of these Tron lands to really like knock out their ability to make mana? I went for the Saga because I was sitting here thinking like, I don't know how I can beat 2 like 5/5 creatures, you know. Doesn't seem that great, but like, what do you know, because of the Ensnaring Bridge, but we have to get rid of that Ensnaring Bridge at some point. And also, like, how are we going to deal these last 9 points of damage without, you know, trying to attack with this Ignoble Hierarch, so. Damping Sphere is nice because it makes it so our opponent can't attack the Karn with their Core Tapper. So they have the Blast Zone on 2. And they go ahead here and pop the Blast Zone. So they get rid of the Damping Sphere. They also get rid of their own Core Tapper. But that's kind of okay for them. It was just a 1/1 creature. Karn is doing a lot of work for us here. Second Ignoble Hierarch is actually pretty sweet. So, gotta say, I like our chances here. Spoiler alert, there's 14 minutes left in this video file. And we're in game 3. Yeah, so we go get the other copy of Damping Spear. Still trying to shut off their Mystic Forge abilities. Now they got their own Karn. So what do you even do with your own Karn? I think the thing to do is make a big... Yeah, they make a big Mystic Forge. And now they can block. Seems pretty smart. So, lots to think about here. Yeah. I have no idea what we're supposed to do here in this We got a lot of different options. We can attack. I don't know. I don't know what to do here. For some reason, I only cast that. I cast that without the kicker. I don't really remember why I did that. My opponent did have a card in hand. Could have just been that I didn't realize they had a card in their hand. Maybe I wanted to keep its power down so that I couldn't, like, so that like right now when they have 2 cards in hand, I could attack if I wanted to. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe because right now it looks like I can use the Karn to bolt the Ensnaring Bridge, then I attack with the Turok and it turns into a 4-power creature. Yeah, it turns into a 4-power creature. But I should have just... I don't know. Alright. Opponent's got a bunch of mana. Second copy of Ensnaring Bridge. Okay. So the whole idea of like turning Ensnaring Bridge into a creature and bolting it, that's not going to happen anymore. So now what? Well, I drew a swamp, so that doesn't do anything. And so I guess we can attack with 1 Hierarch and then bolt the Mystic Forge the rest of the way. This isn't the greatest of plays here because the opponent can just go get another copy of Mystic Forge with a Karn. Like it looks like, hey, the Mystic Forge is gone. Now we're good. Now they're just down to drawing off their library or whatever. But they can just go get another Mystic Forge with Karn. I think they also just maybe top decked that, or that was the card that they had in their hand that I was supposed to get with the Turok. So a while ago there, I don't know. Okay, so now do we pop this Liliana and hit this Ensnaring Bridge, and then we get in for a point? I guess. Here's me being way too tricky. I'm gonna go get a Nile Spellbomb. Problem is, can't activate it. Because of Karn. Alright. Attack for 1. Lots of land. Astral Cornucopia. Gonna go get an artifact. Witchbane Orb. You got it. It's been quite the match. So here's a neat trick. We're going to turn our Nile Spellbomb. See, me going and getting that Nile Spellbomb that looked really bad in the face of this Karn turns out to be pretty clutch because their opponent is at 1 card in hand, and so we're going to put them to 3 here. Okay. So, here's the point where I'm just like, alright, if my opponent just goes and gets... If they just go and get Wormcoil Engine, we're dead, right? How do we beat a Wormcoil Engine? But I think they just don't have it. Yeah. These games where, like, I don't know, Magic is so weird. These games where things just, like, devolve into this, like, this mess. I'm playing with cards from my sideboard, from my opponent's deck. I got Planeswalkers that don't work. My opponent's, like, got this whole, like, toolbox full of stuff, but they're not prepared for, like, how to deal with somebody stealing their own stuff. This is like Hearthstone again, you know? It's just like... Okay, and now we got Crime Punishment. And this is like, what do you do? What do you even do here? Looking back, I still have no idea what the right play is here. I could definitely see a case for blowing this for 1 or for 4 or for 3. I end up doing it for 3, but I tanked for a long time. Here we go, casting it for X is currently 3. And you're going to see this is... I was today years old when I realized punishment didn't hit Planeswalkers. So blow that for 3, and I'm just like, why is my Liliana still alive? That's weird. And so I'm like thinking to myself, oh crap, I should have made them sacrifice. It would have just been lethal. Made them sacrifice a creature. But no, it wouldn't have because they have the Witchbane Orb, so whatever. This puts them to 1. So they need a creature and an Ensnaring Bridge. I mean, if they have Wormcoil in their sideboard, they just get it, and I'm dead. Maybe they boarded in Wormcoil. I never thought of that. It seems like a weird thing to do, but I mean, Wormcoil is really good if you draw it. So they go get Ballista, which seems like it'd be really good, but I have Karn. Also, like, the Damping Sphere is kind of shutting them down here. We don't know what's on top of their library with the Mystic Forge or whatever, but they can't do anything with it. So we got there. Long, kind of wild match. Got ourselves up to 2-2. So, you know, kind of like the analysis, I guess, you know, the post game of the first match. It was just like, how often are you going to run into, you know, mono white ether vials? Like, probably not that often, you know. And how often are you going to run into mono brown Mystic Forge Tron? Like, no, very, very rarely, right? But there are these kind of groups of decks, these like Ether Vial decks or these Urza's Saga decks, and you do want to have like a plan against them because there's a lot of powerful things going on, and even though maybe people are playing different shells of these powerful things, like you do want to have like plans for them. So having a bunch of like engineered explosives and crime punishments as our creature removal suite in our sideboard really helped out against these artifact decks, and running, you know, Kolagon's command really helped out. The Dothy Voidwalker, I mean, this is kind of a corner case scenario, right? That you're going to get Karn in play against like a mono artifact deck, but the Voidwalker plays like punches above its weight really well against these decks that are you know, combo centric like this. You know, we got a Karn out of the deal there, and that was really good. But you don't know that like you could be playing against some Gristlebrand deck or something like, I don't know, some Omniscience. Who knows? Who knows what you're going to be playing against? And so sometimes you're going to like use Dothy Voidwalker to do some really busted things, which is really nice. Against, you can just kind of like use your creativity to figure out a way to win with Dothy Voidwalker a lot of the time. I like the Voidwalkers, and I like in this matchup specifically, the removal suite was very nice. You know, we've seen a couple matches already where the removal suite being like these kind of versatile artifact removal kind of things, and the amount that we're playing was not that great. So let's go to the 5th round. Alright, 2-2 going into the 5th round. Hand looks fine. We have our mana. We have Turn-One Noble Hierarch. Dragon's Rage Chandler. Sure. So, here's the thing. You gotta play the Hierarch here. It looks like a really good bolt target. The way our mana works out, if we bolt this on turn 1, then we're casting 1 spell next turn. If we play Hierarch, even if the Hierarch dies, we're playing 2 spells next turn. Best case scenario, especially after having drawn the Liliana, is that like they play, I don't know, something like another copy of Dragon's Rage or something like that, and we get to Liliana and kill their Dragon's Rage Channeler and just kind of start to go off. So that would all be great. What ends up happening is they play a cantrip and removal spell. So now we're at the point where it's like, what do we do here? I think it's double spell here. You know, try to Thoughtseize plus Bolt. Gotta take the Murktide Regent. Not beating that thing. So now the board is clear. The problem is we've got another Channeler, and now it's a 3/3. They've got a copy of Unholy Heat, which is big enough, or will be good enough to hit this Goyf. So the plan here is to Thoughtseize away the Unholy Heat, and then play a Goyf, and then just try to race. It's a 4/5 against their 3/3. Big problem is that expressive iteration is in their hand, and yeah, gotta make a choice here. Either take the expressive iteration and try to beat this channeler. The channeler just being in play makes their top deck so good. So it's like, I don't know. I think the better play here is to try to race. If we take the iteration, they untap, they unholy heat, or not even untap. They just cast unholy heat. They get a surveil trigger. They're like drawing gas. I think the best plan of action is just to take the unholy heat and hope this expressive iteration kind of whiffs. Not likely, but kind of got to do what you got to do. And I mean, I'm looking at a hand of Scavenging Ooze and Tarmogoyf. I think we needed something cheaper here. If we could have used a removal spell on the channeler here, say instead of a Tarmogoyf, we cast a Terminate or something this turn, then we're kind of doing fine, like a Bloodchief Circe or another Bolt, or just anything that can kill this thing. So, and then they unholy heat the Goyf. We play our second creature. We had, we took out the expressive iteration. They're not getting these surveil triggers, so it's not a great look for this Liliana. The other thing is that, like, if it was Liliana of the Veil instead of Liliana Last Hope, we could just cast Liliana of the Veil, get rid of this channeler, and just 2-for-1 them. If they try to get fancy with the expressive iteration, like later, we're making them discard cards. We're casting our stuff, like so I'm definitely, I want to say this is the third time in this league that we've drawn the Liliana of the Last Hope, and it would have been better had it been just another copy of Liliana of the Veil. That said, like, maybe the trick is you actually just play 4 Liliana of the Veil and some Liliana of the Last Hope, but the 3-1 split that I've got right now, I think is wrong. I think it's not what we want to be doing. Even against small creatures, Dragon's Rage Channeler is nominally a 1 toughness creature. There's Ragavan in this deck. Even in spite of that, like, I think you just gotta play Liliana of the Veil. One thing, and I mean, we'll go over this after this round is over and we wrap up. But one thing that I'm looking at is playing more answers to Murktide Regent, and Liliana of the Last Hope is not one. But Liliana of the Veil is. Your opponent has actual factual counterspell, which it sucks that they get to surveil here, but I think I'm glad that I led with the ooze, because I think it's more important to get the channeler off the battlefield. Having said that, like, if you're playing a Scavenging Ooze that's like a mana sink 2-drop, and you're like, well, good, because I got to get rid of my opponent's 1-drop, and that was more important to get rid of my opponent's 1-drop than it was to get my Scavenging Ooze into play. Like, that card's that just not really doesn't really mean anything or whatever, but that just means that that's a really good card. So, how do we get out of this one? I don't really know. I think we just have to draw something good. Possible I was actually supposed to take the Tarmogoyf with this Liliana minus. Took the Ooze instead in case. I guess the idea is that if I were to somehow survive this turn, we could like exile cards and gain life and get above bolt range, and then draw the removal spell we need to get rid of the Regent. Didn't hit, so it's not going to matter. And it's funny because, like, if I had drawn, let's say, I don't know, we don't have anything actually in the deck, but a 2-mana removal spell, say a Terminator or a Dreadbore, had we had that in the deck, then the Ooze would have been really nice there. So we got to bring in all of our graveyard hate. You know, they're running Dreadhorde Arcanist, they're running Dragon's Rage Channeler, and they've got Murktide Regen. You really want this anti-graveyard stuff. Ended up bringing in the explosives, but not the crime punishments, because the crime punishments you can't like use the mana over 2 turns. I don't know if that's right or not. I don't think I'm ever going to get up to 9 mana and hit a Murktide Regen with crime punishment, but maybe, who knows. Outside of that, yeah, just as much graveyard hate as we can do. I guess I decided in the end to not run the Go Blanks because they're too slow. Two copies of Dragon's Rage Channeler, and a Ragavan, and a Mishra's Bauble. I think it's right to get rid of that Mishra's Bauble, or the Ragavan. Kind of tough though. Like, I guess if I take one of the channelers and I Abrupt Decay then they play a channeler on turn 1, and I Abrupt Decay it, then they can dash in their Ragavan. So I think this is the right play. It's kind of close though. I don't really know. So here's a channeler and a channeler. Thoughtseize Mist, which is not what you want to see when you're on a mulligan already. But this explosives looks pretty good. And so I get into there's a couple of really interesting decision points here in this game, even though it, spoiler alert, is going to end up not being that interesting of a game in the end. But so we kind of have to like decide right here, like, am I going to just on my turn just get rid of these Dragon's Rage Channelers, or am I going to say go and make it so that they can't, like, you know, any spell that they draw, and we know their whole hand right now. Any spell that they draw is going to let them surveil a bunch, and if it's like Serum Visions or something, all of a sudden they're like immediately into like Murktide Regent. Like they get to dig for that Murktide Regent, and they can cast it because they're surveilling so much. So like this is kind of a tough decision point here. I ended up saving the explosives and just like crossing my fingers that they draw another land. and aren't able to trigger the surveil of the channeler, because otherwise the Ragavan hits you, and then like they're gaining card advantage in that direction. So they choose expressive iteration, which is just like the one thing. Not the one thing. There's plenty of things, but that might have been the worst one for us here. So they get to surveil a bunch of times. Dreadhorde Arcanist enters the exile zone. So now we're in heaps of trouble. We have to wait until they attack so that they can't dash in Ragavan. We do finally get rid of these things. But it's not really going to matter. I think that's the right block there. I don't know. I'm trying to think like what gets us out of this. I don't know really. Abrupt Decay maybe? Abrupt Decay would have been good against Counterspell, that's for sure. And a regen. So like I said, there were some interesting decision points in this game, and it turned out to just kind of be a bloodbath, but and not really because of any of those decision points. But you know, this is definitely one thing that I said about the deck as we've got it built. The opponent's deck here also has like the ability to really close out a game and really just like really put you out of your misery when you're in a bad draw, you know. These Murktide Regents are very big. These 2-mana 8/8 flyers. So let's go back to the list and wrap it up. Alright, so to close here today, would say that this deck is... We're still just kind of looking for the right mix of spells to deal with what our opponents are bringing to the table. And I gotta say that, like, against... We played a pretty good smattering of, you know, the stuff that you can expect to play against. Like, two of the top, you know, the top decks that all the pros post photos of on Twitter, okay, that run, you know, Dragon's Rage Chandler and Ragavan. We got one, like, kind of straightforward aggro deck. We had one crazy off-the-wall combo deck. And then we had one, like, a mid-range type of thing. That had some kind of like synergies going on. And so, having said all of that, our losses were to the two like Ragavan Dragon's Rage Chandler decks. I think, you know, we also did lose to the Mono White Taxes deck. But I think in addressing the Ragavan decks and the Dragon's Rage Chandler decks, you kind of would also be addressing the Mono White Taxes deck, because, you know, you get rid of creature removals good against all the creatures. So, going forward, what are we looking for? Well, Turok was not that good. I was not super impressed with Turok. I think that it is not like... Well, first of all, since the last video that I made, the metagame has shifted like dramatically. But Turok has not been great, and it's not because because it isn't a powerful card. It is a very powerful card. It's just that I think the format is under it. I don't think that you can reasonably expect a hymn to Turok even on turn 3 to affect the game very much. And that's if it resolves, if it doesn't get thought seized or counterspelled or whatever. So as far as like our 4-drop slot goes, this might not be the thing that we want to be doing. So what would look good is probably Huntmaster, but I'm going to be keeping my eyes peeled for other things. Go Blank, kind of okay. It's kind of a catch-all against a lot of different stuff, but it's also like, both the Murktide Regent and the Kroxa versions of the Dragon's Rage Channeler decks. It's too fast for Go Blank to actually work, even though it would have been really good. So between those and the Nile Spellbomb, I'm thinking that just the thing to do is just to play 4 Leyline of the Void. Seems like between Channelers, Murktide Regents, Dreadhorde Arcanist, Kroxa, Thought Scour doesn't do anything. There's a lot of stuff going on where if you have like Leyline of the Void, they're not set up to answer it very well, and it's going to shut down a lot of their stuff, a lot of their most important stuff. So that's definitely something to think about, and it's just going to give you like it's an interesting thing when you put Graveyard Hate into your deck, then you're going to have Graveyard Hate against every Graveyard deck, and it's going to be good against it all. So if you put 4 Leyline of the Void in your sideboard, then all of a sudden your matchup against Dredge gets better, against like any kind of like Reanimator thing. Lots of different decks get colded by Leyline of the Void, and so when the decks that get colded by Leyline of the Void are the thing to be doing, then you have like a ton of power lined up there. Outside of that, Cleansing Wildfire looks really good. I do like what we got going on with this card. The Huntmasters looked fine. The Crime and Punishment and Engineered Explosives, those looked really good. And then some catch-all disenchant kind of things, great. I like where we're at kind of with the sideboard. I just think that the specific Graveyard Hate cards need to be different ones. I do think that Turok could probably stand to be something different. I think Liliana the Last Hope should probably just be another Liliana the Veil. I like the Voidwalkers and the Scavenging Oozes because I do like the ability to have Graveyard Hate. And I think we just need we need like more better creature removal. We're in really tough shape against Murktide Regent. Specifically, that card is very hard for us to beat. So Liliana the Veil would help that. Maelstrom Pulse possibly. But I want to try to keep the mana curve a little bit lower than that. So Abrupt Decay, also kind of on the chopping block. Liliana the Last Hope on the chopping block. Ren and 6 looked great. Ragavan and the Hierarchs looked pretty good. The Bolts were good. I like the 5 discard spells. I think that that's kind of the right number with this kind of deck that's got these mana creatures in it. Bloodchief Source have been fine. Did not miss Fatal Push, and Bloodchief Source can in a pinch hit a Murktide Regent. I would say that moving forward, that these are the 5 cards that I'd like to look at swapping, and then also possibly changing up the mana base a little bit. It had some awkwardness with Ren and 6 and Swamps. And then these should be Leyline of the Void. That is my, yeah, down and dirty fixes for this list. I think that for now, I'll keep working on this, but for now I am going to, it is Wednesday, July 7th, as I'm recording this part right now. The new Dungeons & Dragons set comes out, I think, tomorrow on Arena, so I'm going to be doing some of that. I've written a little bit in my blog about some of the new cards coming out and which ones should be good in Jund, Midrange, and Historic. Some kind of interesting things to look at. So a lot of like kind of new ways to shift the deck around to accommodate some new additions. So I will be doing that. I recently set up a Patreon, kind of just to see how it works and stuff, but a lot of it has to do with how I don't really like the Twitch TV subscription model. I don't like the amount that they take from your sub subscription cost. So I set up a Patreon. It's only $1 a month, which I felt was fair because I only do this kind of videos and streams and blog pieces. I do them pretty infrequently. So if you're interested, you can check that out. I think that I'm going to only put like a few things into the like patron only side of the Patreon. But if you're interested, go ahead and check that out. I only made it for $1, so it's pretty cheap. And I will be back making some more videos, checking out some of these Adventures of the Forgotten Realms, Dungeons & Dragons cards, and working on this Jund deck in Modern some more. And I appreciate you watching. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.